Hey everyone, it's time again for a new set. This one's a big set. It's DivineZ set 1. So we're going to look at all the new ride lines and build a deck for them based on some of the stuff that we've seen in the Japanese meta. So it's confirmed, right, that they work. So it's a better start for us. We can kind of build from that. Our format is sometimes different. Our ideas in deck building is sometimes different as well. And we still have to deal with full blast Shiranui right now. Full power Luad as well. We get our Sergion, so yeah, pretty crazy stuff. Let's start off. All right, we have quite a few decks to go through. We're going with Varga first. This is widely touted as the big deck to come out from this set. It's really, really good. The way that I've kind of looked at this deck, there's a lot of ways you can still kind of build it. You can build it with double cyclers because people love it, right? A lot of people have just moved to single energy cycler, which I think is okay because this is a good way to kind of spend your energy. The only other card that really requires energy is Shura, but she only requires energy blast 2, and it's not like you're gonna pop so much energy in a turn to use Shura like 4 times, right? So finding a good outlet for your energy is great. In terms of the rest of the deck, I know people like running Shihab, which is like a 6k, but it gets 5k more when it comes to play. You can, instead of discarding for a ride line cost, you can put into Soul. But I think it's cool. It helps with your aggression early game, right? But then it kind of becomes a dead card later on. So I kind of focused on just running cards that are generally pretty good, right? So Bernaria, if you remember this, Gandiva support. Any of these basically can kind of put down, like Mid-Hat, Impale Horn. You can just throw down early on, and then later on you can cash them in and not feel too bad. So I went with all of that. And then, you know, Varga, the Boulder Axe Dragon, all these are very, very important. In terms of the Glaive Dragon, I don't know if I wanted to run 4 of this. I think it's a good card. I think it's okay. But in the meta we currently have, I kind of don't want to leave things on the board on like the first turn. So I kind of only put it on the 3. So it's kind of weird there. You got to take this out for other cards if you want. But I guess it's still good. It's still good against other matchups, so I kind of leave it in. The main difference between this deck and other decks is that it's focusing slightly a bit more on defense. Right, because Varga right now, if you played against it, has like they say how many cards in your hand. You're like Varga plays like, well, I have like 14 cards, and then you realize a lot of it is just fake. Right, they do draw through a lot of cards. They do get back a lot of their cards that retire. But you have to remember they're all 5k shield. So they're basically trying to draw into nulls and PGs and all that. So other cards I've kind of put in was just the Carbuncle, or the Jeweled Beast, or whatever you like to call it. Extra shield is pretty good, 20k shield. And then also the Defensing Roar, so that adds extra shield and lets you salvage back cool stuff as well. So those two will be 2 extra power cards that you have that'll let you kind of defend a bit more. Other things you can do is you can change the draw trigger to front trigger. Right, the front trigger might be a bit weird. You're like, why would you run a front when your front row disappears? So on Shura turns, when she comes back, front's great. Just triggering a front as well if you have like anything in the front row. So even the Glaive Dragon in the front row, just triggering a front just so much value. And you don't really need to think, right? When you trigger a front, you just, okay, get it. And it's also a 20k shield. Technically, your deck, you go through your deck pretty quickly with all the draws. So draws aren't exactly needed, though they're still good, because draws will get you things like Persona Ride. And since you usually don't have a front row, let's be real, a lot of the times things just die. And you have to be really careful when you use the CB1, because CB1 of Shura, because you can go through a lot of CB with this deck in 1 turn. So a lot of times you just be attacking a Varga, like swing it twice, and the draw trigger is fine for that, right? You don't need a front for that. But overall, this is kind of the build. If you want to change the front, you can. I think it's still fine. And if you want to make this deck more focused, just fighting against Shiranui, because that is the problem we have in our meta currently, you can just change the Grail into just a Bracing Angel Ladder. And then what you're going to do is you're going to empty your whole board on your first turn, riding up to 3. So then when they stride, they don't have anything to dominate. And then hopefully from all the draws that you got a Bracing Angel Ladder, and you can play that next. And then your opponent is pretty much done, right? That's the same combos you have against Shiranui with every single deck. You can do it with this, and you have the extra doors to support that. But I feel like you can pretty much just punch through, hopefully, and kill them. So yeah, I think it's not that bad. So overall, I think this is probably one of the strongest decks to come out of the set. And there's still quite a few ways to build it, right? I've seen, Shihabs. I've seen people run double cyclers. You can take out the defense cards if you don't like it against the front. So there's still a lot of ways for you to change up the deck and make it to something that you like. Next we have is Wellstra. So this is another deck that undergoes a lot of changes based on what you like. Personally, I'm a no toll kind of guy, but she's actually got translated to troll, so I don't like trolls. I'm only running one. The Freiheit back then, this dude, he's like the most important card you need in the deck anyway. You always have to see it. So why change that, right? It was like this before. It is like it now. Just draw your Freiheits, and if you don't, you feel sad. So what are the new changes with the new Wellstra that is different from maybe some of the older preliminary builds? One thing I like is heavy countercharge counts. So 4 Bubble Beans, really cool. Pretty much guaranteed you need at least 4 Bubble Bean, right? But then I also like X copies of Sortian. So I ran this at like 2 to 4 before. I like 4. I like 2. Whenever I have extra countercharge, I like, right? I like. And this card can trigger when your order, like when your Maxim gets like called out, and then at the end of turn it goes back to the order zone. That triggers this, so that's how you can get an extra countercharge from that after getting use from this as well. So that's pretty good. And then a lot of people have been trying Schwarzer Eins, and this is just pretty much like your Sortier, but you get to draw instead of a countercharge. And I think extra draws is good. Extra soul is good. Extra souls also turn into extra draws, right? Because you also have the assistant, the accounting girl, Brigina. She can pretty much draw. It is Soul Blast 2. Your Freiheits is Soul Blast 2 as well, but you do kind of soul charge quite a lot. You just have to plan it out. Use your brain a bit, right? She can also trigger she can also use Counter Blast 1 to trigger a product. Basically, it'll be your Lebetzel. The product lineup in this deck is pretty... I guess it's pretty more focused towards what I like. So I run 1 dog. I know some people want to run 2. I think the dog is just really bad in this deck. It's pretty... This effect, ignore this effect. It just pretty much says it goes into soul. Good times, right? So that's why I run 1 dog. If I draw the dog in the early game, then just don't use your ride line skill, right? You just... Unless you can search for Lebetzel. If you go first, and you draw the dog, then just keep the soul, right? The soul is still good for other stuff. You can convert that soul to other things, right? I run 4 Lebetzel. I was thinking of playing around 3 or 4, but 4. This card is just so important. And then when you go into your Wellstra turn, your first Divine Skill turn, you want to have a Lebetzel there so you can operate the effect, right? You can operate the Lebetzel and get something. So overall, very key card. So I play like 4, but you can really push it down to 3 if you really want to. And then with the other 2 cards, I run 2 satellites. So some people have been saying, 3 satellite is the meta right now. It's really cool. I always want to see satellites because you can energy charge 3 and draw a card. And that card, the energy just converts into more cards because this deck is very energy efficient, right? You'll be able to use Energy Blast 7 to draw a card, I think, quite often. So being able to just energy 3 and keep on cycling that is really, really cool. But I think 2 is fine. I think 2 is fine. And then making sure that you always can get 2 copies of a maximum in your order zone is pretty important, just so you can unlock the 2 combos that this deck wants to do. So the first combo is your satellite combo, where you attack Wellstra first. Your opponent's not at 5 damage, but you take Wellstra first, and then you can pop and deal a damage. Because the 1 damage is pretty much an attack that has confirmed to be hit, right? So it's kind of doing 4 attacks with a confirmed damage. But then if your opponent is on 5, you can do the 5 attack combo still with the old Freischütz Maxim kind of combo with, like, the double products and going 5 attacks, minus power, retire kind of thing. So I think unlocking both combos is still very well. If you can technically cut this down to 2, right? And then if one of these go to damage zone, then who cares? You feel bad, but you still always have the 4 attack kind of combo that's available to you, but you just don't have the 5. So it's really up to you. But that's kind of where your personal tastes can come in a way, right? You're like, I like 3 satellites. I just love satellites. I want to play them every turn and energy charge 3 and draw a card, or I want to make sure I have my 5 attack. So you can decide your lineup that way. I've seen really lean lineups like 2-2-3-1 kind of thing. That means you can add in more things like more counter chargers, more draws, more trolls if you like her, and things like that. So yeah, a lot of ways to kind of play the deck. In terms of what you search for, always make sure you have a Lebetzel before you use the Divine Skill turn, or you can like play something else, I guess. So the one thing you can't play down is the Freischütz Maxim, right? That has to come down either by the Divine Skill or the Freiheit. So one of your slots is always this. And then the other slot will have to be a Lebetzel if you don't have it, or or Satellite if you have Elemental. That's pretty much that's the 3 things you can do on that turn. And then the Energy Blast 2 for the product activation. Make sure this only activates the Satellite, right? Because the Satellite can only be activated by him. You can't use like your Troll or your Fry Shoots to actually Fry Heights, sorry, to be able to activate the Satellite. I see people try it. Sorry, bro, you can't do it. You have to read the effect. It is hard to read because it's very card gameplays, but it's the first part of the effect in the Order Zone. When this card is uprated, the ability of a Vanguard with Wellstrom. It is like that. That is live. So, yeah. Otherwise, this deck is very, very cool, very strong. A lot of the big teams take it as well. Has a lot of... I guess it's very straightforward, and it does. So you're never afraid that it won't perform. And even if it bricks, you still have, like, a lot of cards that you can draw with, in a way. So it seems okay. It seems okay. Next is Razel. I actually have 2 builds of Razel, because one of the builds of Razel is my favorite, my more favorite build, I guess, and that is the Lagriel build. So one of the biggest problems with the deck is with Razel is that it doesn't really have a strong finisher. But with Lagriel, you get to, on the turn you put all your crits back into the deck, you can get 5 drive checks with Lagriel. All right, so you have 3 from the Vanguard, or 2 with the Lagriel. Damn, that's a lot of drive checks, right? That is a finisher in itself. So that's what some of the players have been doing. I know a lot of players still revert to the kind of the standard build, so I've included that later, but I think everyone's just going to show off the standard build anyway. This is kind of the Lagriel build I kind of went with. So we got the 2 Lagriels. You don't need that many because remember, Raziel himself, the effect, can kind of just call out specific cards from the drop zone. And then the rest of the deck is focused around more early game, because that's where you're going to get the most kind of advantage, especially with Keter Sanctuary, right? So first off, 4 TF, 4 Selgaeon, and then 4 of the Minerva, well, Wisdom Order, whatever you want to call it. These 3 package, bam, slam it in. Good times, right? Other cards I've kind of put in. I put in 1 extra copy of this, the Dog Order. This can be used early game as well, but also later on you can kind of use it as kind of more oomph power. Sometimes you don't get the Persona right and you just feel really, really bad because your power swing for garbage. But now you at least get some extra power here. And it's only Energy Blast 2, right? So that kind of works out. This can be used early game as well if you just play it on a whole field. The Bracing Angel Ladder as well is just, boom, anti-Shurino. You don't really have any ways to play around it, so just buying a return can be pretty good. Other cards I've kind of put in 4 copies of Aerial Sage. This guy just basically countercharges, right? You see how this card has a discarded card from hand effect? Who cares? You actually get quite a decent amount of cards in hand with this deck because you're calling so much stuff for free, and the Cell Guns just refund you so many cards. So overall, the Aerial Sage discard is pretty good just because you get a countercharge from that. It's like on demand. Every turn you get 1 countercharge, and if you don't need it, just don't use it, right? The other card that countercharges is Turner, and she just puts into soul and countercharges. I don't think you need that much countercharge when you have the Aerial Sage, but this is just a nice option that you have, and you can just kind of call it out from the drop zone or just play it, just draw whenever you get it, right? The other card that we get from the new set is Nobia. I actually don't think this card is that good. So CB1, you can look at the top 3 cards of the deck and grab a grade 3 card less and call it to the Regard Circle. But then if you do it in the battle phase, you put it to hand instead. So it fulfills 2 functions. It builds a field, which can be nice, but your TF already kind of builds a field. Of course, that requires an order. This requires a counterblast. And then the second effect can kind of get you important cards. You can get like PGs into hand, which is pretty good. Or like orders for the next turn. So there's value there. And then the second effect, you can Soul Blast 1 to get 10k. So similar to TF, hitting decent numbers. But problem is she's a grade 2. Razel requires you to call 2 cards of different grades. So it's always kind of weird what you can call, right? It's always kind of weird what you can call. If you're at like 1 damage, you're calling a 1 and a 0. If you're at 2 damage, you're calling like a 2 and a 0, right? If you're at 3 damage, you're calling a 2 and a 1 or a 3 and a 0. So you can never call like 2 2s. At 4, it's also a weird number. You're calling like a 3 and a 1 or a 2 and a 1. That's kind of it, right? Or a 2 and a 0. So it's weird. And then at probably the peakest, right? At 5 damage, you can do the 3 and the 2. Would you likely just in here would be like a Lagriel and like a TF because that hits the biggest. But then when you call like things like, for example, the 1s, you can always call a Selgaeon when you have to call grade 1. So you just make 4 attacks instead of turn, but that can be big. I guess like a Persona Ride turn, you can call a 1 in the front and you can kind of make slightly weaker attacks, but you know, 5 attacks sometimes is better than 4 if your opponent's at 5. So there's that to consider. So yeah, this is pretty much the Lagriel deck, and there is the standard build as well if you just want to play a bit more standard. You just take out the Lagriel, And then I think you take out another card as well. I think just take out the counter charge. This I think topped one of the CSs as well. So just put in the Gigantic Masher. It hits big, 28k by itself, 38k under Persona Ride. So 3-1, you match like that on like a turn 4, so a 4 damage turn. It's pretty good. You still have the TF combos because it is what it is. TF combo is good. And then you have a Kadawala because Kadawala just builds like a hand for you and also retires itself. You don't have to ever replace her, which is okay, right? It's okay. And the Soul Blast one, you don't really have a problem with Soul. So overall, these are just kind of the standard builds. I think both builds are very, very good. This is just kind of more a personal preference. And when I saw this Lagro build, I'm just like, man, I really like it. It's a crazy idea. And it was kind of the in for a while and then kind of fades in and out depending on, you know, the player base. I think actually for our kind of environment where we're not worried about just losing one game, right? We can go X2 and still kind of make it in. We can play slightly more high roll decks, and this is definitely one of them that will epitomize what our kind of tournament structure is capable of compared to the Japanese ones, where if you lose one, you're praying for diversity cut, right? So there's that. Next we have is Direful Dolls. Direful Dolls actually has undergone one big change ever since it's released, and then it's just been I think this has been the list. I think when people were first building this deck, we went, man, we need soul in this deck. Let's put in things like let's put in things that soul charge, for example. And then you realize actually we don't need that, because if we just don't draw Pelagia, our deck sucks. So or you know, to a lesser extent Liberata, sorry. Our deck sucks. So yeah, take it all out. Let's put in the important card, which is actually 4 copies of Sparta. Now, why is this card good? Well, this deck kind of has a weird problem with finishing the game, right? It can definitely finish the game to some extent, but it can take a bit, right? It can take a bit. You have to be precise and patient. What this card does, what this card does is she's an 18k beater, and she pops away your Direful Doll triggers that you can then call with the grade 3, right? So there's no other ways you can actually pop these triggers. So you see this Direful Doll, Bethany, bam. You can guard with it, right? Same with the heal, the 2 heals. Even this effect heal works. So the only way to pop that into the bind zone is just with Sparta, and then once you do, it's good times. You are like not dying until you do. But this is the only way to get them there. The rest of the deck is just Direful Dolls. Just put in all the Direful Dolls you can. And the important ones are, you know, these 2. This is your multi-attacker, Energy Blast 3 multi-attacker. And then the rest, this is the ride line stuff is okay. It's okay. This kind of gives you 5k. Give your Vanga 5k to kind of hit a bit more. And then just put in 4x of the energy cycler was as well. Then for the Grail, for the Royale, we're on the Grail just because extra Persona Ride means extra finishing power for this deck. And that's pretty much it. This deck is very, very straightforward to build. And it plays plays like Pale Moon. So if you like old school Pale Moon, this is kind of what it is. I think a lot of people have said it. But you just need to kind of master the deck, play quickly so that you don't go to time. It can take a while, but it's very cool. You have to like learn how to balance putting specific die dolls where they are. So they need to be in the certain cards need to be in the bind zone. Then they need to go to the drop. Then you need to put them into soul and then binds, kind of thing. So you have to kind of mix and match and all that, and just kind of learn how all the kind of the flow works. The Direful Doll flow works, and that is something I think you'll have to learn yourself. But once you do, you become very, very good at it. Next we have is Chris Rain. I'm not gonna lie, this deck is not very, very good. This actually topped 1 CS, I think. And then I guess the biggest difference right now is with Chris Rain is when you look at it, you go, oh, Chris Rain requires a full Highlander deck. But the reality is you don't, right? Because it's not really hard to pull off her condition. And then her condition itself will just kind of let you draw more and more cards. And then eventually you'll just have a big hand that will let you fulfill the condition, but doesn't really do much else. That's just kind of the problem with the deck. So you can get a big hand, but then you don't do that much with it. So in terms of actually so basically every single cards that are min-maxing in a way, the Highlander stuff, I feel like you don't actually need, but it's just me min-maxing. So if you really want to min-max the 3 PGs, make them different. The heals make them all different. All the crits make them different. And then the only things you leave there is just the effect fronts that always have to be effect fronts. And that's kind of it, right? Grail for the Persona ride. And then everything else, I feel like, is just you put it in because it's good. So, Energy Cycler, put it in. It's a double cycler build, so you got the Velshibot as well. The key card you have is ROM. This will make your opponent have to guard with 3 cards if they don't PG. And that can be pretty rough. You can kind of scam wins with this card. But then if your opponent draws all the PGs, then you just don't have a game. You're not doing anything. I do recommend you, even if your opponent like guards and all that, like PGs, don't try to damage lock them. Just push, because if you're going all in on this and they have it, you still kind of lose anyway, because the problem with the deck is it just doesn't have much pressure. It's like a 3 attack deck until that one turn it isn't. So just mindlessly push. If you're playing this deck, you're playing because everything looks nice, right? So just turn them sideways and feel good about yourself. Other cards is Yoika. Yoika's good, bounces things, gets a bit of extra power. This is extra shield. Albina is an extra shield. Good old Operice. Always run it in Bermuda. I think it's like one of the best carbuncles that you have. Isn't it even a carbuncle? And then was her name Annie's? Extra power, but also able to look at the top 5 cards and grab something. I don't actually think it's that good. I actually don't think it's that good, this first effect. Energy Blast 3 and Counter Blast 1 is a pretty heavy effect for a deck that already gets so much stuff that you don't really need it. Like, sometimes you even miss. I'm not gonna lie. You like look at top 5 and you hit a bunch of crits and stuff. You're like, oh, I just wasted so much for so little. So personally, I don't think it's that good. Like, you can technically call a trigger or something on the board, and then you can bounce a Restrain skill. That's kind of cool, but overall, I like it because it gets more power. That's the reality. And then we run Adelheid as well. It's probably the best one of these grade 3s, just to kind of get more power, make an extra attack. Cool. One thing with Restrain skill is that, you know, it's there for you to get a 4th attack. Most of the time, the timing is just super weird. What you can really do with this, where it really shines, is that it just makes your hand massive and insane and hard to get through, right? You can call a full board, bounce it, trigger, you draw, your hand becomes really, really crazy. You'll be able to deck out like in 20 minutes. So just consider what you want to use Divine skill for. It's making the 4th attack is always nice, but sometimes it's not always like that, right? Remember, you can always scam wins with a ROM, right? Always scam wins. You're like, whoa, is there two PGs in your damage zone? Time to scam a win, right? So there's always that. And then in terms of OT, I think I run just Bermuda OT. You can pretty much run anything else you want, I guess. Like blue OT will be nice, and then red OT probably won't be nice. So I think it's really between like blue OT and Bermuda OT, but this one at least can make your other reguards at least slightly bigger, so you can kind of like turn them sideways and bash them. So there's that. Next we have is Lascaria. So Lascaria really hasn't done anything the entirety of Divine's set 1. Now, I'm just going to be real. I'm just going to throw it out there and be real. It does get way better in set 2, but set 1, you're playing it because you like the Bug Girl. That's pretty much it. How do you build the deck? Throw all the Veranos in. That's it. Everything with Villano, or they call Villano in English. So everything with this, throw it in, right? You actually don't have enough of them in the deck. What else do you put in? Energy Cycler. I actually not a huge fan of Energy Cyclers, simply because the Blitz order here requires you to Energy Blast 2, and it's such an awkward timing because you have to save energy for your opponent's turn that it conflicts. Like, it just conflicts with this one. This one requires Energy Blast 3 to draw a card. This one requires Energy Blast 2 to do the combo that like this deck really needs to do. So you run 4 Energy Cyclers. This one I'm a bit like weird about. So the Energy Blast 3 for this, it conflicts with the Energy Blast 2 for the order that you primarily use, the Blitz order. But like technically you can use CB1 for it because your Lascaria countercharges at least once every turn. So you can kind of do that. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that this Energy Blast 3 and the Blitz order Energy Blast 2 kind of conflicts. And the Energy Blast 2 can leave you at weird energy numbers where you can't just use this one again. So personally, that's just kind of a thing for me. But the second effect is actually very relevant for this deck. It lets you grab orders. or like, you know, key cards that you need. So overall, there's that. So still kind of put it in, and you have so much slot anyway. And then in terms of like the triggers, you just run crits and fronts, and then for the orders, I guess this is where the spicy stuff is. You have to run 4 of the Lascaria order, the Dream Blade, and then we split it between the Sweet Honey Garden, and the what was this? Was this the Zorga? It's not really the Zorga order, right? It's just the abolishment of sins. It can get really fat, which can be pretty good. And then the other orders that we can play: Bracing Angel Ladder, Best Regalia, Spiritual Body Condensation, call it an important card out. And then this Overcoming Unnatural Death can help you grab more orders back, so you have a healthy dose of orders in your hand that you can keep on guarding with, because when you run out of orders, then you feel kind of bad. And then one thing is you run the Nectar of Sensationalism, because this deck does have a finishing problem, but if you put this on one of your big orifices, then, you know, two restands of fat with crit is pretty good. It's pretty good, especially at the end. So that's pretty much with Lascaria. I think it should be pretty cheap. If you want to invest in this, set 2 definitely makes it better. And then for us English folk, we finally get our Bang Dream collabs. So for Mygo, this one is definitely doing some rounds. It's still pretty strong. You can still see it topping quite often. One of the changes that it got when it went to 50 cards rather than 46 main deck. So one of the changes is, I think, more Krychik cards are put in. People can put in the green Regalius piece. Before, it was kind of like you have to decide if you have the space for it, but now you definitely have the space for it. And then extra song orders. That's where all the extra copies have been. Personally, just put it, depending on how many Krychik cards you play, you can just run less of the Haruhi Kage. If you run like less Krychik, then you can run less of this. I think the baseline is just 2/2/2, and then just put extra copies into the other 2 cards. But otherwise, well, it's mainly this one. It's mainly this one actually. But otherwise, yeah, I've seen all the different kind of lineups for the song orders. I have like 3-1-3, you know, 2-3-2, 2-2-4. All of them have been like that. I think it's really up to you. The trigger as well, you know, draws and fronts. I've seen 3 and 4, right, of each of these, like less crits even. So pretty interesting there. But otherwise, just put in all the Mygos and some Krychiks to fill out the rest of the space, and you're pretty much good. And then in terms of Morphonica, this one kind of seems on and off play. It's seeing less play now in Japan at least. But this is primarily the anti-Shiranui deck. If you go into a singles meta and everyone is playing Shiranui, then if you play this, you're just going to make all the Shiranuis feel really, really bad. Because you have this specific song that just says, all your Morphonica Regods can be chosen by your friend's card effects. So you keep on spamming this every turn, and bam, your Shiranui opponent just feels like bad. What else is this deck? Well, how do you build this deck? So this deck is actually easier to build than Mygo. You just put in 4 of every single Morphonica card. Put in, yeah, the crits. Just put in Morphonica crits as well, just to min-max. And you can put in the green Regalis piece as well. And that's the entire deck. That's just the entire deck. Pretty straightforward. Other than that, that's just all the decks. All the deck log codes will be in the description. If you want to see more, how do you say it, in-depth guides on each deck, maybe we can make something more later on. I'm sure a lot of content creators are also doing that. This one is just there to kind of get you started and get you playing, right? Because playing is how I learn and how you should learn too. Okay, so that's it from me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. All right, bye.